President Trump is again pushing back on reports of poor conditions aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln after a number of families have expressed concerns.
I was at a group meeting and an admiral came up to see me over the weekend. And it was at a big group, and he happened to be an admiral retired. He said, "I've been on ships that are out there much longer than that, sir. And I know people on the Lincoln, they say it's beautifully maintained and beautifully taken care of."
For more on this, we're joined by Natalie Oliverio. She's a U.S. Navy veteran and Pentagon correspondent for the Military Times and has been speaking with family members of those on board the USS Lincoln. So, Natalie, let's start there. What have you heard from the family members about those conditions, and does it match with what the administration is saying?
Good morning. And it does not match. What we're hearing from military families is they feel shrugged off. They feel a little silenced, and some people believe that a part of readiness is ensuring that the families on the home front are secure, they have what they need, and they're being communicated with as much as possible.
So, Natalie, as Kelly pointed out, you're a Navy veteran. People will be wondering, what is typical in a deployment like this? And understanding that we are engaged in a war. I mean, this is a war with a foreign power. What is a typical length of engagement at sea on an aircraft carrier, the size and the importance of the USS Abraham Lincoln? And what do you think, why do you think there's been a breakdown in the supplies that are meant for our sailors that are deployed on that vessel?
Thanks, Vlad. To answer the second part of that, a part of the problem why supplies are not getting to the sailors is because a huge supply outlet in Bahrain was damaged very early on as the war with Iran got underway. So instead of being able to pull into a port in Bahrain, the USS Abraham Lincoln would have to make an out-of-their-way trip 5 days out each way just to get supplies. And the airspace is really too contested to just get helicopters out there to drop mail or supplies or fresh food. Same with underway replenishments. While reports have showed the USS Abraham Lincoln has completed 23 underway replenishments, we're talking about 23 visits to the gas station and supply shop across nearly 9 months. That's really stretching the resilience of this ship and the carrier strike group altogether.
That's really important context.
Very important.
In terms of why. I mean, I think that was a really good question, but that's something that I hadn't heard before in terms of why the supply issue is happening. When you've been talking with families, I mean, what are the main concerns that they have? Obviously, they want their family members home safe, but beyond that, I mean, we've heard some concerns about mental health.
Yes, and the families feel frustrated. One military spouse told me that her husband feels like he is on a metal floating prison, and they're just not getting their basic needs met. Mental health, brain fog, poor nutrition, less than ideal conditions. They're not meant to be sustained. I don't know that combat or combat deployments are entirely predictable. It seems that they wouldn't be. However, predicting how to meet basic needs is something the Navy is actually very good at. They are intended to run on a 36-month maintenance schedule. And in that 36-month period, a deployment time is only carved out to be 8 months. That's maximum. That's the maximum bandwidth they're meant to be stretched. So as we've seen recently, just this year with the USS Ford and now the Lincoln, they are stretching those carrier strike groups far past that threshold.
And I guess the other question for me, Natalie, is, and you know, we all have heard that famous quote from Napoleon, "An army marches on its stomach," which is that, you know, to keep going for sustained periods of time, you need to make sure that the men and the women under your command are being fed adequately, that their mental health issues are being addressed. That clearly seems to not be the case here, according to some of the reporting that the Military Times has done. And so the second component of that is what the actual mission is and what the end goal is. That has not been clearly articulated by the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, other than to say that he wants to ensure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon, which doesn't actually mean anything if you are a sailor aboard the USS Lincoln. So how does that factor in, the fact that there are not clearly articulated and defined mission goals as far as the overall mission for this during this war?
Understanding an individual and a team's role in an overall mission is incredibly important to a service member. The power of purpose and understanding what that vision looks like, what you as an individual need to do to get there, because there must be a gap from the starting point to the end of a mission. So in order to be fit for duty and ready for duty, you have to be able to perform at your best. And performing at your best means understanding what you're performing for. So as much as they can, they are doing their best. They're extremely resilient and they are doing an extraordinary job. But is our military and are our leaders in the Department of Defense doing their best to support our Navy?
Yeah, well said. Natalie Oliverio, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much, Natalie, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.